Thank you, Mr. President. The American representative said that Russia spends resources to support what she called the Syrian regime. My question to her: what about the United States? The United States is spending its resources in Syria on what? To provide food and milk to Syrian children, or to provide armed groups with weapons, armed groups that have committed the most heinous crimes against the Syrian people? Or is it spending resources on your planes and fighter jets that have been so active in Syria? My American colleague has been threatening my country in most Security Council sessions. And note that I'm not referring to the American administration as the American regime, because it's shameful. We cannot do this in the United Nations. They investigated the presence of WMDs in Iraq for 18 years. This commission was headed by a Swede, Hans Blix, and as you know, this commission didn't find anything after 18 years of investigation or examination. They didn't find any chemical weapons, they didn't find Coca-Cola or Pepsi-Cola. Mr. President, the American anti-racism activist Martin Luther King said, and I quote, "A lie is like a snowball. The further you roll it, the bigger it becomes." End of quote. It seems that this wise saying holds true at any time and at any place. The governments of some countries are lying incessantly. Fortunately, though, they're not quite perfecting the details of their web of lies. Some permanent members have become professional liars, and this in itself is a weapon of mass destruction. Through lying, Israel was occupied. Through lying, Palestine was occupied. Through lying, they fueled the war in the Korean Peninsula. Through lying, they invaded Vietnam. Through lying, they invaded Grenada. Through lying, they occupied Iraq. Through lying, they destroyed Libya. Through lying, they established Takfiri terrorist groups such as Al-Qaeda, Taliban, ISIS, Al-Nusra Front, Jaish al-Islam, and the list goes on. And through lying, these countries are trying to defeat Syria and prepare the ground for an aggression. It is worthy to note that the statement, the negative statement of the U.S. representative is in contradiction with a statement made by General Matthews, Defense Secretary. He said in an interview with Newsweek 2 days ago, with the journalist Ian Winke, this journalist used a title for this interview. I will read it out in English.
Now, Mattis admits there was no evidence President Assad used poison gas on his own people. هذا ليس وزير دفاع سوريا.
This is not the Syrian defense minister, it's the American defense secretary. How coherent is this administration? The United States, the United Kingdom, and France have been so eager to hold one meeting after the other, based on fabricated information. This is part of a deep crisis that we're witnessing, and they want to involve other council members in this crisis. These three countries, created in the Security Council since 2013, a big elephant of lies and deceit. And this elephant is living today in this chamber and is stamping with its huge feet on the credibility of this council. It seems that these countries called for holding this session to support terrorists and to obstruct the agreement reached about Duma. However, these countries were a bit late because the terrorists wanted this meeting to be held before they were forced to reach an agreement with the Syrian state to leave their strongholds and hand over their weapons. These countries were late in fulfilling their promises to the terrorists. It would have been better not to repeat this broken record and not to rely on false reports from mercenaries, so-called white helmets, that were established by British intelligence officer James Lomizure. He's British, but his name is French. Mr. President, we conveyed to the Security Council, the OPCW, and what used to be called the Joint Investigative Mechanism, 145 letters, the latest on April 1st, 2018. 145 letters. And I thank the permanent representative of Kazakhstan, who noted that you don't read those letters and you don't respond to those letters. Those letters contain accurate information stating that terrorist groups, armed terrorist groups, possess toxic chemical substances, notably chlorine and sarin. We warned time and again that those groups are preparing for crimes of use of chemical weapons, and they're working with the white helmets to fabricate evidence, to take pictures of locations and film Hollywood-like scenes, everything staged, all that to blame the Syrian government, to influence public opinion and to incite against Syria and its allies. This is why these countries called for holding this meeting to create pretexts and justify any military aggression on Syria. It seems, Mr. President, that the directors of this bloody terrorist scene failed to perfect their web of lies. We know that in each of those theatrical scenes on the alleged use of chemical weapons by the Syrian government, we note that these substances never find their way to armed elements. It's always children and women. Chemical weapons that discriminate against armed elements, but you know they love children and women. These substances only need to be washed away with water in front of the camera. Just water, you know. Water heals everything. Rescue workers never need to wear protective masks. And it seems that the Syrian Arab army only uses those substances that it doesn't possess to begin with, because the Americans destroyed them on the Ray ship in the Mediterranean. So the Syrian Arab army only uses those substances that it doesn't possess in the first place, only when it is making military progress. How strange, how strange. Mr. President, it is very simple, really. Let me just say that on our borders with Turkey and in the separation zone with in Golan, we still have tens of thousands of good, moderate terrorists with their light weapons, long beards, black banners, and white helmets. Whoever wants to adopt them, please submit an application to their operators. They're ready. They're ready to be adopted. They can go to the West, they can go to Europe as refugees. In conclusion, Mr. President, the Syrian Arab Republic stresses once again that it does not possess any chemical weapons of any type, including chlorine, and we condemn once again the use of chemical weapons at any time and anywhere and under any circumstance.